as well.
Okay.
Moving on.
A real subject, please. All right.
So I feel that this conversation is a reflection of what I wanted to talk about, which is the age of decadence. I think like we're in an so I've been reading slowly through the course of my life Sexual Personae by Camille Paglia.
Yeah.
And she's this chapter I just read, she was talking about like the decadence of late Rome, and I was so like struck by these stories of emperors like being like very theatrically gay and like trans, and like begging their doctors, like one story of an emperor that was like begging the doctors to like castrate him and like construct for him a vagina.
In Rome?
In Rome, ancient Rome.
Wow.
And like, yeah, I was just so like, reading that was so striking to me, and I just thought like, oh my God, like the situation we're in now is not so new as I sometimes think it is. Like, this is an ancient idea, and people have been, it's like what's new is that we have the technology to try to do it. But the idea
I'd
is
hate
not.
to see what the ancient Roman version of surgery was like.
Well, they compromised on simple castration rather than like.
It's easier to take something away than it is to add something in general, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It's something I've heard from Douglas Murray a few different times, this idea of, or he goes forward from Paglia's just observation into, when a civilization is in decline and about to fall apart, everyone gets really obsessed with gender bender, mixing, transvestite type stuff. And he just like says that in interviews as a generality, and to say that, to point out that it's not automatically a virtue to free yourself from gender norms. It's a normal, habitual thing that civilizations do when they're rotting away. But he doesn't have any like specific examples, like it sounds like Paglia did, and I'm not sure that Paglia was even making that point. But you brought it up in the context of an age of decadence, so I think obviously she was.
Yeah.
But it seems decadent to me on the surface of just like, there are way more important things to be doing with your life and with your body.
Yeah.
And way better ways to deal with what we now call gender dysmorphia than frivolously spending your dollars and your physical health on.
Yeah.
I mean, why can't you just make some fucking paintings or something? No one has to get anything cut off if you're just making like really feminine paintings as a man or something.
I mean, I don't know. I think I have a different opinion about that. I think like I don't think decadence is inherently a bad thing. I don't really know why I think that, but I don't feel that it is a bad thing. I think it's probably relative. Like if you, okay, so I'll put it, I think there is something, I was thinking about this the other day, I think there's something sort of transhumanist about being gay, because it's kind of like implying that you want something other than a thing that's your biological purpose. Because, from like a completely reductive, selfish Gene Dawkins kind of point of view, it's like you're just a robot that DNA built to perpetuate itself. So any little inkling of anything that deviates from that plot is sort of incidentally transhumanist in the sense that you're not doing the script that's been running for like a billion years. So I guess,
Yeah, I can just present Paglia in support of you. So like a very Apollonian Athenian culture had like these gay men obsessed with the beautiful boy. And yeah, that was not just an obsession with a certain body, but it was like everything that image meant, which is like Apollonian perfection and reason, which like the female form was said as like antithetical to. And like like a body like is beautiful because it looks like what it does is their idea. So like the body of a beautiful boy like is made for like athleticism, and like the reason behind the form is visible from the outside. But why a woman looks like a woman like isn't clear. Like there's like extra stuff going on, and like the logic of it like doesn't really make sense. Like what's happening there? And like, well, it's because like there's a secret thing going on inside, and like what this is for isn't visible from the outside. That's like the whole like mystery of woman. But yeah, that's like not an Apollonian kind of virtue. So yeah, the queer like gay attraction is like getting closer to like what? Reason, logic, an Apollonian
I mean, there's
ideal.
something that seems really classical about it. Because there's a lot of examples of sort of regressive cultures that are really hard on heteronormativity, and those cultures are also typically sort of regressive in. I say regressive because, like, from a late modern perspective, they're regressive, but really they're just closer to the script of kind of like social institutions being evolved around the idea of survival and political stability, and so it's a little bit judgmental to I just don't know. I think that the issue of like how liberated people are is sort of orthogonal to what you should be doing. I don't think it's really a function of that. I think it's kind of it's related to what extent your society is freed from how much space has been opened up, like how much distance is there between how you needed to be to get to where you were and what kind of surplus you now have that's being kind of filled by this vacuum of arbitrary, willful desire, which is kind of a hallmark of humanity, is this basic dissatisfaction, at least for me, like a basic dissatisfaction with things where for some reason I think like that's just built into the human spirit in some way, is to want to push boundaries. So I wouldn't want to judge someone for not pushing boundaries. Like I wouldn't walk up to like a agrarian society and be like, wow, that's fucked up that there's no gay people here. Like you all just have like a home and kids and you're doing farm work 20 hours, 10 hours a day. Okay, well, maybe you're doing that way so you can like live and pass down property and not get like it confiscated by the local lord or whatever. Maybe some political reason why your culture is bent into that particular shape. But I also wouldn't judge a Roman emperor for doing some crazy stuff, because I don't know what it's like to be a Roman emperor. It must be insane to be a god king. Yeah. You must have to really think about, what am I even supposed to be doing? I need to push some limits up against like the limits of my own psyche. So I don't know. I don't. I think decadence is more of just like a sign, a canary in the coal mine of change, than it is like a symptom, perhaps. I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's a neutral thing. It can go either way. Decadence is one sign of readiness for something to ignite the culture. We're decadent now, not by having so much wealth and so much opportunity democratized to so many different people. We're decadent by not having a zeitgeist to activate all that wealth in any particular direction.
Yeah. specifically like sex and gender stuff that happens in Ages of Decadence that's really interesting and amazing. Like it expands what humans can be and how individuals can identify. Like
I think any artist making any kind of art is like flirting with transsexual and bisexual explorations of the psyche. Yeah,
and I think like maybe the part that I'm reacting to negatively is just when it starts to seem destructive to me, which is like when it starts to look like mutilation or something, like and that's for everybody to figure out on their own, but like that's when reading a story like that I'm like, no, don't do it, you know. And
okay, but you were first bringing up Decadence in regards to homeless people.
So then I was thinking like, okay, reading that, we're in an age of decadence. Like I'm seeing a hallmark of it. Like what else in my culture do I see as decadence? And so I went from like those kind of movements to like just like aesthetics that I've seen on social media. So the intense, just hyper focus on sex itself, like the way that's being expressed now is like OnlyFans and stuff like that, just like pornography. And then from there, like a certain breed of like internet person that's posting pornography next to pictures of like their intensely messy bedroom and their like fast food wrappers or something. And so like then that led me to thinking like, oh yeah, there's this like logical progression from there to like standard of life keeps like lowering, and you're kind of like
living a trash life,
indulging in like trash life. And that and the like young people that I know who come from like reasonably comfortable families and then suddenly are identifying as homeless, and the strangeness of that. And there's so many ways that can happen, but I was thinking also it's like it's a decadent situation, because it's like you can identify as homeless but know that you have someone's couch to sleep on, and like you know that you have somewhere you can get food, and so you're kind of able to indulge in trash life because there's certain things stored up around you that you don't actually have to like just make sure that you're surviving.
Of course. Yeah, I think it's definitely an aspect of, it's like, if I'm trying to personally, I think I can kind of personally understand the motivations to want to be unhappy with something that by all accounts you should be happy with, because
me too.
It's I think that's kind of like when you have luxury but you're like not satisfied emotionally, there's almost like okay, so you know how like when I was in high school, emo was going through a phase, and people would like like listen to emo bands and cut themselves, and I'm sure some people really had some emotional problems, but also some people did it because like it was the thing. And but that, leaving that aside, there is something to the idea that you're like, I'm in pain because my parents are just like, I just like live in a suburban hellscape, and like my parents are just depressed, and I'm like wealthy, but like I'm just like this angsty white kid in like a suburb of some unremarkable city, and I feel unhappy with my aesthetic and my milieu, but I don't have enough life experience to articulate why, and I just have to keep going. So I'm just going to create some pain in my life that is an expression of, or like that gives me an object to explain why I am not happy. I think something is like that with kind of in general the world at large right now, where people aren't happy, but they want to just want to have something concrete to focus on, maybe. And so adopting a kind of voluntary adversity, whether by like assuming some kind of minority status or becoming homeless or something like that, is, well, I mean, it's the fact that you see it amongst people who are pretty heavily enfranchised in society, just proportionally, does point to the fact that there's some kind of reason, there's something you're getting out of it to do that.
Well, they're literally being paid to be homeless, and that's where it is decadent right now. How much of this homeless population in America would exist if they weren't being fed and clothed and cleaned and given drugs, or given the means to do drugs more safely and more often?
Are you talking about like people who are, are we talking about people who are voluntarily homeless, like who are like kids who have parents and stuff but want to live on other people's couches? Or?
Well, I'm talking about the whole slice of them now.
Oh.
Like they're paid in liberal states. They're paid to be that way.
I mean, I think something that, like, I guess I don't totally know like the specifics of that, so I'm just like kind of going in another direction now, which is like the difference between like community people organizing to like figure out how to take care of homeless people versus like in, you know, a much more traditional, like, you know, way prior to decadence, when your culture is oriented around survival, like, people are, like, brutally vicious to outsiders or, like, hangers-on, because they're just completely oriented around protection. And so they're just treating, like, everything as, like, a natural force that's ready to, like, harm them or kill them or something.
Yeah, I remember one time in Finland, I had this weird experience with this old Finnish guy who I was fishing with, and we were in a boat, and he was like pulling up these fish out of this lake, and he would kind of like he didn't speak English at all, and I only sort of spoke Finnish at the time, and I was like, he like threw the fish in the bottom of the boat, and it was just like flopping around. And what I've always done is just like pick the fish up and try to like hit it on something hard so it'll stop flopping, because I just don't want to let it flop. Because I have like this, I guess, moral feeling that I should do that or something. Like, don't just let an animal die, you know. And so I started doing that, and he's like, "Oh, like, what are you doing?" You know. And I was like, "Oh, okay. You know, I guess I'll just do it your way, because you know what you're doing here." And then turns out that like you can't just do that, because then it makes it really hard to like de-gill them or something. And it made me think like I was like really in that situation, someone who's coming in with the luxury of like like looking at like a thing that's probably been done for thousands of years as like I'm applying like a moral lens to it, when he's kind of doing a thing that he probably learned. He's only maybe 1 or 2 generations removed from people who were like, I'm going to survive the winter by getting these fish out of the lake. And I think there's something more. Yeah. There's something that like is a little bit more like kind of brutal about humans when they're being completely honest about what they want, kind of. And there's like almost like a jungle Eden kind of feel to that, but so I don't think that's bad. I think there's like a certain dignity to that, but there's also dignity to not identifying with that as like the final picture of humans, like who we are, you know, like being gay, for example, or maybe not letting a fish flop around. Right. They're almost like they're a departure from what makes the most obvious, easy survival sense. But but like also our desires are also a real part of nature that is just as real as like the weeds and those trees and stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's appropriate to use that like white American privilege to like well, I don't need to use these fish to survive, so that's not so much the like brutal necessity beating down the door, so I can afford to be more moral. Like using an overabundance of wealth to try and do things better now that you have space to breathe. But it's definitely decadence in the bad sense, what we see in America, where people are using the overabundance of wealth as an excuse to make things worse for themselves, or to just stay in a bad place on purpose because, well, like, they're not gonna die. They can still stay alive there.
Yeah, like, I feel like a liberal arts education kind of gave me the sense that I should just like stop moving completely, because any move I make is just like inherently immoral. Like, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism or something, so just like don't even breathe. And that's a really painful place to be psychologically. Like, it's so self-destructive, even if you're not like physically mutilating yourself. It's like,
right.
Yeah,
having that default idea of that your very existence is unethical is something that only someone who was like ensconced in a completely materially secure environment would think. I don't think so maybe that's just kind of like a bit of naivete of how much of what life kind of is, where it comes from, like where wealth comes from. It's not like I mean, why stop at capitalism? Like, if you're going to make that argument, it's kind of getting down to a little bit more of a deeper metaphysical question of like, do you have the right to kill an animal to avoid starving? That's where you have to start metaphysically if you really think about that. Because it's not like other alternative economic systems have a super great track record of environmental protection either. It seems like consumption in general is something that, like, the way I square this ethically is that I sort of imagine that there's an overall goal to the world, and that when I'm taking what I need to survive, and maybe even more than I need to survive, I'm doing it with my own permission in some kind of larger sense, and that the universe wouldn't have gotten so far that we would all be born as these really powerful beings capable of doing all this if it really wasn't worth it on like a metaphysical level. Like, I think we've talked about this before too, like, if this was not fundamentally a net positive situation, like all this living and dying and killing and breathing and being born and like if this wasn't worth it on a fundamental level, then it would have ended a long time ago. I don't think there's any sort of kind of like that's the fact that we feel that we're on some kind of train that's off the rails is, I think, an artifact of a like scientism, sort of not understanding that there's aspects to reality that are kind of fundamentally subjective, and that subjective doesn't imply is not somehow like on a lower tier of reality than what you can measure.
Not coming in with the idea that your existence is fundamentally good is dangerous.
Yeah, it seems like you're forfeiting something.
You use the word like you must have some amount of naivete to be able to peddle that kind of philosophy to your college students.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead and say that's evil. It's satanic evil to take impressionable minds and rob them of their tool they need to make a life for themselves, which is their mind in the world with a natural sense that they belong here.
Okay, I will play the other side and say, like, yeah, impressionable minds, I'll give you that. Like, it should be about the tools to, like, make your life, make more of it. But I do think maybe it's, like, taking a good idea a little too far. The good idea being like, yeah, one should be critical of their impact on things. Like one should be willing to consider the ways that their existence isn't good, and maybe correct those. Like that is useful, and then like taken to this extreme, like it's like a satanic thing, and taken to this extreme, it's like, oh my God, we've created a hellscape here.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of like that thing we thought about, like when you're like the idea of an apology is when it becomes an institution, it starts becoming toxic. Being self-critical as an institution is pretty toxic because it's not your thoughts. It's just kind of a program that you walked into. And I do get the feeling that college these days, especially like increasingly, is kind of a struggle session, sort of.
Struggle session?
Yeah, wait, I don't actually know what that means.
A struggle session, I thought you guys knew. I forget. It's like in Mao's China, there would be it was like a way of like figuring out of whether someone was part of the the bourgeois or not. Where you'd come in and be like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And like kind of trying to pin someone down on what their ideology. It's the if you're not with us, you're against us thing applied to the trying to sort society into. I think there's something like that.
Oh, that is so true. Yeah, now I'm remembering, like, it was very much like, have you memorized the rhetoric? Have you, like, been reading the posters that we have around that have our slogans?
Yeah. I think college is definitely, like, what I was going to ask when you said about the satanic thing is, do you think the devil is there anything the devil doesn't know? Is the devil naive?
Yeah.
I think by definition, what makes the devil an evil symbol in a conversation or in his experience of himself, as opposed to a helpful trickster, is if he's gone from ignorance and foolishness to, now he knows he's against the fabric of goodness, and he's persisting in it anyway for evil's own sake.
Yeah.
So, like, there's the devil that is the ultimate personification of evil because he does know better, and he's doing it anyway.
But
then there's the more innocent trickster devil image that, like, well, he's fulfilling some, like, higher purpose by being foolish.
Yeah, I like that trickster image, but I think, like, yeah, innocent is right, naive is, like, the devil in that way can be naive and is, like, unconscious of the ways that, like, his rebellion is, just insufficient to integrating the fool with the world, something like that.
Because, like, I remember when I was the rebellious little devil in my life, I was working for my own good, even though I didn't know it. So I was naive in thinking that, like, like, it's like literally what every teenager does, is they think their parents are completely full of shit, which is true, but they're also always overestimating it, even if only to the extent that they overestimate how much that they're going to be bound to be just like their parents. Like, even if their parents are total pieces of shit, they still think, like mine are, just in case anyone thinks my parents are pretty great, honestly, all things considered, but I'm imagining someone who just has terrible parents. Even then, you still have to have a little bit of naivete is useful, because you don't want to go through life thinking that you're doomed to be that way. You want to underestimate what they were up against so that you don't feel like you're going to be crushed by that same thing. You want to have this irrational confidence that helps you break away from the collective. So I guess I think that college professors, I don't think they're trying to actively poison the minds of students. I think they're trying to do what they think is good, which is just, turns out it really isn't that really great, but I don't think it's malign.
I don't think it's helpful to give them that much benefit of the doubt when they're destroying an entire civilization. Like, they're at fault. They're doing a bad job.
Right, but
They're just following orders, Alex.
I think that the more, if you, like, the people who usually end up winning in the end are people who, like, make people realize on their own that something else is, like, sexier or more fun or something. So
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, there's a certain kind of, like, you're gonna get. I just don't want to. I mean, if I was in college, I'd probably feel differently. I'd probably be like, I don't know, like a punk or something. Like, punk energy is a thing that's it's like a stage, but I don't think it's a completely sustainable thing. And, like, as evidenced by the way that, like, punk bands have now become like the establishment or something, because they became the mirror image of a mirror image. So they're now the thing again, like a weird low-res version of it. I think something that's happening too in college right now, where it's like you successfully trained a generation of people. There was like the hippies are now the establishment in some sort of really weird, strange way. That being countercultural doesn't have, like, the same tropes attached to it that it used to. So
Yeah.
I think it's just the same thing is going on, because back in, like, the 50s, there was students who were, professors were trying to poison the minds of their students in different ways.
I don't think for posterity, I don't think professors are actively trying to poison people's minds. I think they're sharing what they personally believe, even if it's destructive to them.
The strength of my the strength of my argument there is, whatever their conscious intentions are, they need to be held accountable for what the effects of their careers are doing to a culture.
Yeah, that's
and
always.
They're robbing kids of the ability to discover reality.
Yeah, that's a really important principle for everyone in the world. Yeah.
Goddamn, what else? Well, I had something cool after that, but go ahead.
I was going to ask a question, which is, someone was kind of telling me, like, they've had times in life of watching someone, they perceive them as, like, intellectually peacocking, and they found that really cringy. And I was, like, thinking in that moment, like, oh, I'm going to go make this podcast with Stuart and Alex, and, like, and host the salon on Sunday. And I was thinking, like, I wonder if
we're peacocking all weekend.
Perceived as intellectually peacocking, and I was thinking, like, maybe I'm, like, being all modest to, like, defend against, like, that critique.
Yeah.
But my first thought was, like, oh, I don't feel like I do that, like, because I don't really think that's smart. I think I'm just, like, curious and, like, engaged or something, like, and then I was wondering, like, do you guys ever consciously, like, intellectually peacock? Is that something you do? Is that something you engage in?
No. Stuart, you do? You consciously, though?
So peacock means...
Okay,
what is a peacock again?
What is a peacock?
No, I mean, I know
this is his... he's doing it right now.
I want to make sure that I have
a genius.
Does peacocking mean that you have an opinion that is smart sounding, so you want to share it with people?
To me, it's talking to hear yourself talk. You're not talking to further the conversation. You're not talking to discover. You're not talking to increase connection with someone else. Sure. You're not even talking for the joy of discovering what you think next. It's a facade. And, my experience of people intellectually peacocking is when the quality of their thoughts has just tanked, but either they know it and don't care, or they haven't noticed, and they've talked 5 minutes past the end of their thought.
Yeah.
Derek did that a lot.
Yeah. There's the perfect character is Midnight in Paris, the, like, husband of the other woman, and he's, like, saying something about Rodin being married to that one artist, but it was his mistress, and he's like, no, they were married, and he's totally wrong, and it's so cringy.
I mean, I think I definitely have a tendency whenever I feel unsecure to probably unconsciously force the conversation to something that I feel like I can talk about, so I can talk.
Yes.
I think probably do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I noticed that in myself a lot. That when I was a kid, I used to be really bad about it, of like just being too like aggressive and like controlling the thread of a conversation.
Yeah.
I get that from my mom, actually. She does that.
Yeah.
And it's super frustrating.
Yeah.
But I got yelled at by my boss one time about doing that when I was a kid,
Really?
and I was like, "Whoa, like, is this not normal?" Like, so I don't know. I think the Peacock wants to show off.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that, because that, to me, I think that's like a positive thing, because if you don't want to show off, like, why are you even getting dressed in the morning? Like, shouldn't you want to like,
nice.
I mean, like, okay, if you don't think that you're like good or something, just like hide all day or something, be like a groundhog, but yeah, I definitely also do the thing where I probably like try to, I don't know. You don't want to sound like an idiot.
You don't want to sound like an idiot.
Or maybe even worse, like you don't. Actually, what I'm really afraid of is seeming like I don't care. Because I guess I don't really mind if I don't know people, or like if people if people don't know, people don't feel like I know things. That somehow doesn't bother me as much as like if people thought that I was someone who just was wasn't
disengaged.
like someone who wasn't going to make a conversation more interesting, or who would talk all the time, or just someone says something interesting, you just go like, yep, and then okay, ping pong thing, like
Yeah, I feel like, well, especially when we started doing Film Desk, like I feel, and with Salon, like I feel like I make myself really vulnerable, because I don't feel like a master of my mind. I'm just like wandering around like, whoa. And yeah, I feel very vulnerable. It's not like usually flexing, but also I will, like with the Salon, like direct things where I can be interested. And then if I find myself in a situation where the conversation is like doing some social game that I can't even tune into because I just don't care, like, yeah, I just like totally zone out, and that feels bad. So like I'll take it somewhere else, and then
yeah, disconnected is a really bad feeling.
I think I try to just take care of all the peacocking before social moments happen, so that it's like it'd be redundant for me to like try and take up more space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But Stuart, about like just trying to make sure like people know like you care about the moment. I mean, we've talked about this before. You and I have like very different strategies of how to do that, because I'm always taking issue with you giving people the benefit of the doubt, and I'm always going like, if something's wrong by your standards, why don't you tell them? That's like you're running the risk of actually not caring about anything they say or think if you dismiss the things that, according to your terms, are openly wrong, but then you don't care enough to point it out or talk about it. And that's not what you're going for at all. What you care about is human connection, and so you just go for that and dismiss the things that, in your view, will get in the way of connection. So it's different strategies we both have to achieve the same thing, which is greater human understanding between people.
Yeah, well, should you respond? That's so interesting to bring up that like duality, because I tend toward like being more like you, Stuart, as I'm looking for where the common ground is, but then I can miss like an opportunity to really discover what the synthesis it would be between these different people, like myself and someone else, because I haven't been as bold in the past of like pointing out what I disagree with. But it's so, there's like a mastery of communication required to really do that, because I think maybe it's our culture. Like, if you do really like assertively point out something like that, people will like be defensive or just kind of shut down, and so that there has to be like a real dance.
Has that been your experience of people around me? Have you seen people get defensive and shut down around me? Mm-hmm. When has that happened?
Do I need to say names? I'm not doing that.
But well, we can cut it out. But like, do I not notice when I do that? Maybe these are points where I've been intellectually peacocking.
Do you notice eventually, and then you just kind of back off?
Okay, so we should talk about Jade's critique of the pod and how we've grown or developed or anything over the last year.
So I had texted Alex asking if I was coming on the pod this week. He was like, sure. And I was like, okay, you really need a guest because you're in your flop era.
Hey, what?
You're in your flop era.
Who's in the flop era?
I hate to break it to you. You guys.
We're in the flop era?
We're in the flop era. So the past couple weeks, kind of whip it into shape, guys.
Yeah, we need to talk more about what are the themes that we usually cover.
Well,
we do get stuck on a certain ruts.
Yeah, you get into like these really imaginative, like metaphysical realms, and that's what's so fun about this podcast. But it doesn't work unless it's grounded in like relatable, reality, current events type things. Like you saw a movie, but you hadn't seen it, so we didn't really get to like.
Don't spoil too much. I know.
It was a great film.
Right.
But I miss that like references to present things where it can be like, oh, that's their like take on this experience I've also had.
See, we have like a undercode happening though, where we're like incredibly wary of current event talking heads, like giving commentary on the news cycle, because we both hate the news cycle so much.
But I don't think it has to be just that. It's just like relating to like the outer world outside of the pod, like references to artists, references to culture, you know.
We need gossip. That's what we need.
We need gossip on this pod.
We need...
What are the Kardashians doing? Like, can we talk about Pete Davidson? I don't understand.
I mean, yeah, I love having things to talk about. It's just a privilege. I've been
talking into his micro stick.
Yeah, I hope this is on.
This is like the most Lost Boys thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Can you imagine if we were just stranded on an island, Tom Hanks, for like months and months, we still kept doing the podcast? Be like, so...
The podcast would be like...
It'd get weird.
Well, it would get really weird. It'd be amazing to record it, but it'd save our lives, I think.
Yeah.
Like, that's a major survival mechanism of mine is everything's changed. I can't control this fact that everything's changed, but really, has anything changed? I'm still making this podcast on Friday. I'm still doing this on Saturday. I'm still doing that on Sunday. And guess what? I'm doing all of it a little better than last week. Nothing's changed. And so on a desert island, like, no, we're still potting every goddamn Friday.
Change is good and helpful, and being in touch with how things are changing keeps the pot alive.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know, but
like these
I'm trying to force some trickster energy.
Okay. Well then what I'm saying is these things that remain unchangeable by your force of will and your productive ability are the ship with which you can forge forthrightly into the seas of change. Otherwise, the seas of change just tumble you over and you die.
Forthrightly. That's a great word.
Seas of change. and navigating it with the ship of Theseus. You know what that paradox is?
Oh, the ship of Thebes?
Isn't it Theseus?
Probably.
This is like
Is it the one that keeps getting replaced piece by piece? Yeah.
So is it the same ship at all? And then
yeah,
everything's changed. Your journey continues.
We're just a pattern. Our cells recycle every 7 years. That's true. Yeah, the podcast definitely has a few original parts, like these microphones. I think you talking about like productivity is probably a thing that we've done forever.
Yeah.
It's
You guys are always talking about how to be more productive. I'm like, why?
Yeah, we need more cultural references for sure. I do understand that whole idea of being like allergic to the news cycle thing. I am trying to stay away from that because, like I was saying the other day, I don't actually know what's going on. I don't know how to know what's going on because I'm unwilling to admit that what's supposedly going on is what's really going on because that'd be like so boring. I want there to be like something.
That's your reason.
Yeah, I'm not willing. I think there's more interesting things in the world than like Trump or something. You know what I mean? Like whatever the news is about. You know, so.
Every time I start to think I know what's going on, I get really afraid. so I dial it back a little.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I
think I would be a conspiracy theorist if I
I am a conspiracy. I like conspiracy theories are like just theories, really. Like, I mean,
like any other.
just garden variety theories about.
They're right next to your scientific theories, your philosophical theories.
Theories of why your hair is the way it is. If you don't have like sort of really unsupported personal beliefs about things, like, are you really a person? I mean, yeah. So I guess maybe that somewhat relates to the whole peacock idea. Is like, I think it's okay to be a peacock if you admit you're a peacock.
I think it's amazing and beautiful to be a peacock, obviously.
Even if you're an unself-aware peacock.
The question is whether people are forced to participate in your games or not.
Yeah.
If you get to peacock out to your own heart's desire, whether or not people are participating in it, then the only people that participate in it are freely selecting in to play with you for their own purposes, and then that's very good.
It's like why theater people are fun, because they all are there to show off. And there's like a kind of humane sort of like, it's actually a really high level social code agreement about like who we get to be. There's like more of an experimental feeling. I mean, when I'm around friends I'm really comfortable with, I feel like I act a little bit because I know they're not going to hold it against me. When I'm around people I don't know very well, I'm like, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I'm like way more like I'm an adult.
Yeah.
You know, like hi, kind of thing. So, I think we should aspire to be colorful birds.
Well, I love this reaction because since I was like a kid, I've had a part of myself that really is like against performativity. So this is like.
Me too.
Yeah.
Actually, I was raised that way.
Oh yeah.
So Jade, what are ideal Attractor episodes? Like one thrust of the question is, well, if we're 2 years down the line or 5 years down the line and the quality's been getting better the entire time, what kind of episode does that look like? Or the thrust of the question in a different way is, well, when you hear like one of your favorite episodes that we make, what are some features it has?
Okay, so like I think I can say like the arc of it can like warm up with like where are we at with our projects. That's the productivity conversation, getting you into like, well, Elon Musk or David Lynch always does this thing. And then like that opens up into something more universal, like a cultural thing that's happening that you can like get into and talk about, and that opens up a larger like philosophical discussion, and then like landing back in the specifics of like, if you were a wizard, what color would you be? That was very cute. I like the little like personal aesthetic explorations that happen occasionally.
Yeah, we need to ask each other more pointed questions about like what if kind of scenarios. Because that's revealing.
What if you couldn't code, Stuart?
I'd become a chef.
You'd be a damn good chef.
I thought about this.
Not that. Just kidding. No,
we're not doing it right.
No. I'm actually thinking like, okay, so Attractor, anytime you guys project like visions of the future, it is so fun. But like, I would be a chef is not specific enough. Tell us what the kitchen would be like. What kind of chef would you be? Like, I want like a full... Tell us everything, Stuart.
I guess I haven't thought that much about it because can't anticipate that.
Be a bow chef.
Yeah, I probably would like, I don't know. I just think cooking is really fun because it's like creative and there's like, it's kind of open-ended. Mm-hmm. It's basically like kind of it's like what coding is, but with food, sort of. You're putting stuff together and coming up with a thing that, like, when you're done with it, people are like, "Wow, you made that?" That's the feeling that I like to chase. Yeah. It's like a thing where people are like impressed that you made this magical little thing that like, because like I don't know how people make food. When I go to like a sushi place, I'm like, that's so good. Like that. For some reason I can watch a YouTube video and it goes through all the steps and I try to do it and it's, not bad, but it's not that good. Yeah. So where is that, what is the secret? Like that's kind of, also if you're really good at what you do and like I think if you were like a chef and you built like a personal brand and convinced people that you were doing something like really clever or something, I think you could be like really successful at it. Mm-hmm. Because there's people who became chefs by like cooking with like tree bark and stuff. Because it's like some Nordic cuisine. I'm like, this is like kind of dumb, honestly, but it shows you the power of like coming up with this. I don't know. I think branding is kind of interesting. Yeah. Because it's like this good faith manipulation of people in some sense where you're saying like it's a take it or leave it kind of thing. It's like, I made this thing. If you want to buy into this, you can be impressed. Yeah. Or not. Yeah. I'm not like forcing you to be, but I'm trying to create like an appealing thing that is like a beautiful artifact. It's just, because a brand is actually not an idea. I don't know exactly what a brand is, but that's an interesting question to think about.
Is there some kind of metaphor to make as a chef about what you're doing with satellite? That's not like one dish you're making, is it? Or are you making a kitchen?
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Are you making a whole chef's kitchen with satellite?
Yeah, satellite is a place where you can come start your own restaurant. And the infrastructure is available for you to start your own restaurant. Okay. And also the customers are available for you to start your own restaurant. And there's already a built-in point-of-sale system. Yep, that's what it is. Yeah, because like I was trying to think like, how can I relate to the meal thing? It's like, that's beautiful to me because you're like giving someone like a magic experience. There's like ritual to it. There's like intaking something from the environment, like what effect will it have upon you? The fact that it's like maybe beautifully constructed or something, but so it's like a magic spell in a way. It's like a potion. Yeah, it's like casting it. Like, and what you said a few minutes ago about how you always had this part of you that was against the performative aspect. I like also have had that for a very long time, and I think I just kind of realized this now, I think what's happened to me is like I'm probably displacing that into wanting to make a thing that's like apart from me, where I can just be like the little puppet master who's like, you know, always just dressed in black and like goes up on the stage and just like does a thing. Don't look at me. What you're looking at is the creation. Or like the photographer who just comes and like super like sneaks around and but makes a thing that is like represents. Kind of you get to choose like what. Yeah, you're kind of casting a impression of yourself. Because like, I don't know. For me, that's how I relate to strangers, for sure. Not like people I really know, but it's definitely how I relate to strangers. Is like I imagine an image of like what image can I cast at these people that's going to be valuable to them, which probably relates to why I hate to disagree with people, because like I mean I can disagree with people in my own mind, but I want them to continue talking so that I can, because I'm insecure about talking too much. So I don't want to over talk. So.
So you give me the micro stick.
It's burning me.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there's something ironic about like talking into a microphone about how you overtalk. Thank you. I need like a caddy, you know? Like carry it.
Oh my god.
Well, I'm feeling it winding down. Do we have anything interesting to say about aristocracy or monarchy?
Yeah.
Those are what we can get into,
Yeah, we should talk about that. See,
Yes.
that's one of those things we should have put at the top, and then yeah, anyway.
I do notice with all these kinds of pieces of content I make is it's slowest at the start, and then it like really locks into something eventually.
Yeah, like us yesterday.
Like us yesterday, yeah. We
finally got going when we started talking about Mother.
We were doing a whole film review that didn't really get going until we started talking about a different film. No, more generously, it got going like halfway through the film we were supposed to be reviewing. And then that's obviously just as I get better and better at editing, I'll have a better intuition about how much of that slow front end to just cut off.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'm noticing because of public figures like Mencius Moldbug, Curtis Yarvin is his real name.
Oh,
I thought
okay.
it was Menicus.
Mencius Moldbug.
Oh, yeah.
Because of more popular pundits like that,
Neo-feudalism, Dark Enlightenment.
monarchy is coming back into the conversation, unironically, which it's partly just an edgelord take to like say something edgy and batshit crazy, maybe.
I don't even think,
But there's also some romance to it, because like kings get to wear crowns and someone gets to be special. God damn, at least someone gets to be special.
Well, I don't even think this is edgelord or romanticism. I think this is journalism. Like, how did Biden get there? Like, there's no reason. Like, nobody was like, we love him. Like, that was very much like a lineage thing.
Anointed,
And Clinton and Trump were really appearing as like monarchs, like in that election. That was like Queen Mother or like.
And what Stuart and I were batting back and forth in the thread on a Peter Thiel type rant was, well, if you can. So monarchy's happening anyway, like you just said, and lineage is happening anyway. If we could only just get it to be more honest and transparent, then we could start to get better monarchs into the seat. And obviously my answer there is separation of the economy from the state so that we can all vote with our dollars and have our dollars actually represent value and not fiat currency.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like because I don't want Elon Musk to be king. I want him to be his weird autistic self in a factory as always.
So I think, if I were to make a defensive monarchy, this is it. not saying I advocate this, but this is, I think, logically the strongest defense of monarchy. Okay, so this is another thing Peter Thiel said. He had this whole thing about like how if you want to start a business, you want to try to be a monopoly, because competition is for losers, and competition depletes capital. And his example is the airline industry, which in 20 years, the net profit of airline industry has been close to zero because of so many things that have gone out of business. And there's incredible competition, so that's like a win for the consumer. Like, it's good for people, but it's terrible for the people who are trying to get rich off of a company and industry that's like super competitive. So democracy is a super competitive political economy. It means that it's great for the people in the sense that there's a lot of choice, and there's kind of a danger. There's mitigating the dangers of like really tall towers of Babel that are going to crash over at some point and like kind of crush people. But the downside of it is that it prevents accumulation of really large, there's a downside to preventing the accumulation of power also. This is my abstract defense of monarchy, that sometimes concentrated power can really get things done. And so in a world where the system that is for a long time been able to get things done and kind of balance the whole like, because power is like fire, so you need it to do things, but also it burns your house down. So that when we see this balance breaking recently, where you get people like you were saying, like bad monarchs, like just jokers who've basically like bought the Bitcoin and are now like a billionaire, but like in terms of politics, like somehow just got really lucky and are just out of control with their influence, and there's almost like everyone's like, wow, can we believe this really happened? Like, it's because it's this really unstable kind of way of getting power. There's something almost like more dignified about a king that is like, maybe that's why the lineage is so important, is because it removes this question of who gets power. The answer is you don't get power. Power is not something you get. It's something you just have. And when you have it, it creates it limits the competition in other aspects of society. So people can, society's almost less optimized. And I think when society's less market optimized, there might be more room for people to have lifestyles that would not ordinarily be sustainable in a fully commoditized market economy. Like patrons of the arts. Patron art, Sistine Chapel was because of monarchy. If Michelangelo had to go scraping around for supporters on Patreon, he probably wouldn't have gotten. See, he had So, and Patreon, even the name of it is like a callback to this is where artists used to get money. What do we do now? Well, we don't live in a culture with big unnatural traditional accumulations of social and political capital anymore, because it's all been mitigated by this efficient market mechanism. So that's my...
Yeah, well, that's just perfectly leading into just my thoughts about aristocracy, which is what aristocracy does, at least for culture, if not for politics, is it's not really about what I happen to want to do, for my career. It's about my family's lineage and building this history. And so your life takes on just a much different light of the place you fall in history. And so the kind of art that you would be willing to pay for becomes very important, not just to the friends you have over for dinner, but it becomes part of hundreds of years of a collection that will be passed down. And the kind of art that your family collected will become remembered and important, because that's how aristocracy works. And so then it's aristocrats that are the holders of money have this responsibility that's not about someone's random tastes that season, but they're looking for like, they're also looking for who is the best to like bestow this money on. Like they're kind of trying to be like searching for virtue, not in a democratic way, but in like a
in a sort of we have a lot to lose kind of way. So we're gonna so the aristocracy is kind of like a proof of stake sort of thing.
Yeah.
Instead of a proof of work, where you're kind of going like, where there might be a war between these two countries, but like the aristocracy is still on this each other's kind of, they're on the side of like being the rich people, and we have a lot more in common with each other on that count than the people who are on the battlefield killing each other. I think historically that's how it's been, is that aristocracy has been sort of a stabilizing influence, because there's a kind of almost like transnational class interests on the rich side, sort of like kind of like what Marx was hoping would happen on the poor side, but it's like it was a thing for a long time on the wealthy side of the spectrum of like this stabilizing political force. I mean, I guess the question is it worth it? Is it even realistic to want that now?
I think aristocracy is a natural flower of what humans naturally make if you aren't stealing their legacy from them through government bureaucracy. Like, you literally can't pass your legacy down to other people. There's taxes to make sure you can't pass your legacy on, and obviously family lineages hell-bent on doing it anyway are just gonna like lobby and change the laws or do something illegal to make sure they get to pass the money down anyway. I'm not sure where I like connect with this conversation, except like, yeah, billionaires should exist. That's my like edgy opinion. And millionaires should exist.
Is that edgy?
Billionaires should not exist is the Democratic Party line.
Yeah.
With that.
I think they should exist. I think aristocrats as such should exist. I think like human beauty and achievement should be conserved through generations for sure. With monarchy, I think my only interest in ideas of monarchy, like as a direction to go in from here, as opposed to where we are now, is, well, it'd be a lot harder for a monarch to fuck with everybody because there's only one of him.
Yeah, and like
to the extent that it limits the power of that top executive person, I'm
that's
I'm
a really
down.
interesting take.
That is really interesting. Like someone is a monarch for their entire lives. That seems incredibly stabilizing. That seems really attractive. Like, instead of just like different presidents all the time, so annoying.
You'd also like get the chance to even accidentally get good at your job.
Yeah.
Because you'd be there for more than 4 years.
Do we have aristocrats now?
No, but I think the idea of aristocrats is so attractive to me. Like, I want people to think of themselves that way. Like, I want lineage. I want like this like feeling that like one's life is that important, and the way that one would carry themselves in that light. But I would like maybe like to live under a monarchy, but also I would never want to have to like be directly in contact with that. That sounds horrible.
But you might want to like go to a monarch's birthday ball.
I would. Yeah. That's true.
I think I would.
I would definitely do that.
I think I would hate to live under a monarchy. I think the only reason it seems vaguely interesting is because it's a romantic foreign thing for me, and I think if there was something where like, well, so like Jack Ma, basically, who was the founder of Alibaba in China, he got a little too rich and disappeared for like a month, and then when he came back, he was like much more polite to Xi Jinping. So like he kind of got a little bit of a smackdown for being just too high profile. And I think that'd be depressing. it would be depressing if there was an idea that you had to sort of mentally limit like how much of a colorful bird you could strive to be, because you don't want to like threaten it reminds me of this whole thing of like the art and the danger of giving a gift to a king. There's like it's very dangerous to give a gift to a king, because if you give too small of a gift, it's an insult, and if you give too great of a gift, it's a threat. And you don't want to do anything that disturbs the balance. And like that would just be terrible to live under that kind of cultural feeling.
Yeah, that it's fragile and you can like overthrow it or
So that is like, maybe there's a kind of macroscopic political stability and monarchy, but I think it comes at the price of stagnation. And like the billionaires list of people, like the top, pretty much all of them have only been there for like a few years or something, so they haven't inherited that wealth. Elon Musk is number one, then like the Google guys on the list. There's like Jeff Bezos.
That is so interesting, the power dynamics of that. Like, I think growing up in a democracy, like I think of those power dynamics as reserved specifically for like Gossip Girl and like The Tudors, like really like soapy TV shows, but that would be like a living reality. That's when women become really important, like navigating social dynamics that men don't necessarily always catch on to. I wouldn't be very useful. Maybe I would.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the intuition would become really high stakes.
Yeah.
Guys who didn't know what the fuck.
Aristocracy is a feminist
Oh my
idea.
God. Wow. Yeah, you couldn't be like just like a dude who walked into, so what's up? And you're like, you're not gonna last very long. Look, man. You gotta read the room, buddy. Wow, that is such a unique take on feminism. I have never thought about that before. That's that's Dune-ish a little bit. Something like that in Dune. Dooney.
Yeah, the Kennedys kind of consider themselves aristocrats, and the Kennedy women would like plan the births of their children for like astrology stuff to like give birth to leaders. This is the kind of leader we need right now. We need a Leo. I don't know.
That's one of the pitfalls of feminist like aristocracy.
You don't know.
Banking on intuition. That's silly.
Well, like in conjunction with the masculine force, maybe it's like genius.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling tapped out, but is there more?
I think.
Maybe one closing point. Maybe the reason why gender is in question now is because we're like in the exact we're so far away from aristocracy that we're forgetting about the utility of gender in like a political context or something like that. So it doesn't seem useful, and so we're questioning it.
Yeah, we try to flatten gender for this political context, like equalize it.
We don't have visions of a noble soul that, like, if you enact them, they start to make you into an aristocratic personage. And because we aren't setting our goals that high, we, as a culture, we don't have to, like, when your goals are really set for the fucking limit, you have to use everything nature gives you. And the gender dynamic is a really fucking powerful energy capacitor. And, well, just more practically, you want a lineage, you gotta make babies. Hello.
Right.